We are going to bring some other members of the Quest team, and there are members out here, folks that have been involved, all through the process. So I want to chat a little bit about, about those folks, and clearly Mary Ferdon, our mayor, right, and Jim Roberts, who you know, CEC, Jim Schott, senior Commons leader forever, Bonnie Boatwright, who's, as you know, works with the city, and you've heard about the downtown work that she's working with as well. And everybody's going to say a little something. What I'd say is they all have great resumes. They all have great things to say. They're all community leaders. They're all really critical in various areas of the community that they work. But they probably come to you with this Quest thing with another hat that's probably worth thinking about, and that is citizens of Columbus. People who live here, work here, raise families here, have been involved in this community. And I think with Quest, more come to you from that perspective. And you'll hear these voices that folks that are going to want to say a few things to you about how we build America's best community, a vision for that, and how we might do it. And so maybe Mary, would you want to just say a few words right off the start?
I just wanted to give you a little bit of context about when it started, right? Back in 2023, as Jim Lennon was finishing his, last year, Rick Johnson, I think it was Shrikant, who had been talking amongst themselves for many, many months, came to Jim and myself and said that they really felt like the community was at a place where if we wanted to move forward into the next, into the future, that we needed to figure out what that looked like. And so that was really the beginning of Quest, and we didn't call it that at that point in time. But the one point that I always stand up in front of crowds and talk about is, and Angie, you did an amazing job. Where is she? With her, right, yes, good. Because you use the word intentional, and that's what this community does so well, and that's what really is the core of Quest, is our intentionality. You cannot be the best at anything unless you have a vision and unless you work toward that vision. And we talk about many examples, right? Near and dear to my heart was Volunteers in Medicine many years ago when we decided it was important that people in the community had medical care. The CEC is a really great example. I see Sherry sitting back here and Jim sitting here now, because we value education across the board, secondary to post-secondary. And so you can say you value education, but if you don't do something about it, it doesn't ever really happen. We've done the same with arts. We've done the same with hospice. Mark Stewart is sitting there. We had a great annual meeting last week, right, with United Way. Foundation for Youth had a great meeting last week, as did the Chamber. We celebrate Heritage Fund. I don't see anybody sitting here. We celebrate all of these organizations and accomplishments that we've done, but it took that intentionality. It took a group of people, which Columbus does well, to sit down, identify the issue, identify the problem, and figure out if we're going to make it better, if we're going to be the best, we have to be proactive and we have to work on that. And that's really at the bottom of Quest. And what's exciting to me is that I hear people talking about it, right? And Rick and Jim are gonna fill you in, and Bonnie, about kind of the different phases of it. But the more excited we get and the more we talk about it, that's how we become the best at anything. So I'm really proud of the work that you guys have done, and I'm gonna turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mary. I'll just lay a little bit of groundwork for it. And again, many of you have already been a part of it, so it may feel a bit repetitive, but hopefully fresh in some ways as well. And I want to particularly thank Mary. She's doing a great job as mayor, as you know, and a great job supporting Quest and the work here. And it's, Quest is a journey, right? We have some goals. We'll figure it out a little bit as we go. We're taking it chapter at a time. We're learning as we go, but really appreciate Mary's support throughout the process, and not just support. What I can tell you about Mary is when she engages, she reads the memos, the things that come out there, right? She sees what's coming through, and she has a comment or two about it, and those comments or two are really, really good with a lot of insight. So we really appreciate that. So it's not just support, it's an active interest. Really, everybody on the steering committee does that. Maybe I can, if I can find the go forward button here, I will hit that button. Here's a group of people who are kind of key in what we do. So the steering committee is this group, which Mary talked about, just kind of a small group that they got together initially and said, hey, in thinking about Columbus, right, and thinking about the Columbus of the future, right, what might we do? How could we impact that? We are so lucky, right? We work on a base of strength. The reason we can really do this work is because we have a great community with great infrastructure, with great people who have been at this for a long, long time, right? We're not starting over. We're not in a position where there's some deep problem. We're not trying to avoid some big ill that comes at us. We're here because we have a great community with great strength and great depth. And I see Fred, in the back, and Sherry, so many, everybody here, right, has laid some tracks in that. And this is our time, right? This is still our time to continue to figure out how we do the best to lay tracks for those who come after us. So we've got a steering committee that's worked on, and then we've broken into these groups, which you can see names of some folks who are taking an active role in it. But when we started thinking about, okay, what's the role you play now, right? What's the spot now? What's the thing you do now? What we said was, hey, we're in this strong position. And kind of what are some bedrock things about that position that we should really enhance? And we went back to the J.I. Miller statement, from the 1964 speech, right? It's still true today, that what his wish was that this could be not the cheapest, right, but the very best community of its size in the country is what he said. And we started talking about that of its size in a Heritage Fund community meeting. The group said, why are we saying of its size? Why are we limiting to that? What if we just said the very best community? What if we were trying to build America's best community? What would we have to do? How would we do that? And it's a little bit, the whiskey thing came up, right? When we were creating our whiskey brand, our very first whiskey that hit the market, we spent a lot of time and effort working on that. And it ended up being one of 4 finalists for Best Bourbon of the Year at the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. We said, wow. I mean, honestly, when Ricky came to me first and said, hey, we're a finalist, we're one of 3 finalists for the Best Bourbon of the Year, I said, there's no way, right? I mean, and then we said, okay, we actually are. We read that in Forbes. And then we said, okay, how would we be, that was not intentional. We worked hard, but it was not intentional, as Mary talks to all the time. But when we said, hey, if we wanted to do that on a regular basis, what would we do? And all of a sudden, the tumblers started falling in a different way. And we said, if we wanted to do that, we would start on a little, we would start doing this and this and this and this. And now 33 of those finalists for Best Of category awards later, in 3.5 years, we're on a track that can do that. So what we're really talking about is how could we make a little bit of a shift in thinking, right? And that's part of our process, is how do we make a shift? But it's on that basis from J.I. Miller's comment, which is as true today as it was in 1964 when he said it. So what we wanted to do was say, how could we put something in place? So this is a little bit of a different program. How could we put something in place today that might be as true 70 years from today as it is today? So rather than create just an initiative, right, where a group of people come together, which is pretty traditional, where we say, okay, here's what we need to do right now, and we try and pull the support together and and get the community behind it and move in that direction. We said, well, that would be something for right now, for the next 5 years, for the next 7 years, for today, right? But if we want to make something that lasts over time, that's as true 70 years from today, like Miller's statement, as true in 70 years as it is today. What we really thought about was how do we build on this culture that we have in Columbus, that we've been working on for a long, long time. It's kind of anchored in that statement. A culture of excellence, a culture of doing our best, a culture of thinking of ourselves as standing out, a culture of being best. How could we take that, which I will tell you as we've gone through these a big community outreach, everybody kind of knows that Janet Miller statement, except if you're a young person in this community. And you talk to the young people in the community and you say, hey, J.I. Miller, and you know they don't know who that is. They don't know who that is. So how do we invigorate this in a way that kind of lasts for that generation? And so what Quest is a journey, a process for a journey. A process for a journey that can be refreshed over and over again. A process that brings forward the ethic of having a vision, an ethic that we have in this community that's about being the very, very best. And so we're creating a process for that. And it has 3 layers to it. And the 3 layers really are a top layer, which is more like an initiative, right? More like a traditional community would go through. And this is an outline of the work that we did when we said, okay, if we're going to be the best community, and we're going to build the best community, there's probably a few things that we have to win on. There's a few things we have to win on. And we got there, let me diverge just a minute, we got there by saying, in a traditional Columbus format, if we're going to do this, it probably isn't the 15 of us that are working on the steering committee that ought to invent this. What we probably ought to do is find somebody that's seen it happen 100 times, and seen it go well, and seen it not go well. And so we did reach out, and we found this guy, Stephen Ames, who had been through this a lot of times, and he helped us look at this. And he said, hey, here's a way that you could go through this process. He says, you're probably going to come up with 3, 4, or 5 key initiatives, and it won't look a lot like a lot of other communities do. But he said, as you work on it, it'll start looking different. You'll hear some talk about that as we go on. But we went through this community process, a traditional community process, where we reached out to lots of different people, lots of different areas. Bonnie did some fantastic work with Storyboard to get that all working. And so, but we came up with probably, well, there were, on the written standpoint, a little over 3,000 comments, which I looked through 3,000 of those. And as did many of us here, but what I really was astounded by, and this will come through in stage 2 and 3 of the process, is the diversity of interests, the diversity of aspirations, and the talent to go after a lot of these things. What it really said was, hey, it's pretty unlikely that 15 of us, or 25 of us, or 100 of us, or 200 of us are really going to pull that off. But anyway, so we took all those comments, and it distilled up to maybe 12, 13, 14 kind of areas. And then the committee said, okay, how do we take this, distilled from 3,000 things, that kind of you could throw in 13 or 14 buckets, and how do you throw it into something that's workable? So we distilled it back up to these really kind of 4 things. We have to win on economic vitality. We have to win on education and talent. We have to win on having a sense of place here. And we have to win on this being a community for all. So we took that 3,000 comments, distilled it one time to a smaller group, and then to these 4 things. And then kind of threaded behind it this kind of civic leadership that Columbus has been so strongly known for, broadly shared and community-led. So this really came out of that survey, and it probably isn't revolutionary. It probably shouldn't be revolutionary. According to our consultant, it shouldn't be. And we've got groups, which you saw on the list, groups assigned to each of these areas that would who would be going through what we call pillars. These are pillars or areas we need to win on. And they'll be breaking out what's the vision shift in each of these. From what are we doing today to what would we like to be doing? From making a whiskey to making award-winning top whiskey. Right? What's the vision shift in each of these areas we go through? And then looking at what are the strategies we could engage around that? And then if we're thinking about those strategies, what would be real game changers? If you really wanted to shoot for the stars, what might that be? What would quick wins be? How would we measure ourselves along the way? How do we benchmark that? How do we do like we did with Stephen when we said, hey, we really need to know the context, the overall context of what's possible. How do we do that? So we got teams that are starting to work through that. So that's kind of one level, the pillars. The second level under that is organizations. We developed an 8-step process that we think supports organizations, every organization in Columbus, and that means the Chamber, the EDB, the library, the established organizations, the United Way, but also maybe it's a neighborhood association, maybe it's a garden club, maybe it's a book club. It could be any organization. A process that every organization, when they're ready to sit back and say, and be intentional, back to where Mary always anchors us, rather than being caught up with the events of every day, right? Every day is too busy, every week is too busy, every month is too busy, but how do we pull back and take a little bit of time and say, hey, if we were going to really do the very best we could do, what would that look like? And then how would that reorganize the activities of every day, of every week, of every month, in pursuit of maybe a different goal? And if we could get a lot of different organizations, all the organizations invited, if we could disperse this leadership rather than concentrate it, maybe that's how you become the very best community in the country. And then we'll take that even one step further. How do we take every individual and say, every individual, every organization, every group working on a pillar, but every individual, how would you take every individual and say, and ask that person to think about, if this is going to be the very best community that it can be, the very best community in the country, those 3,500 responses we got, we can't do that with a small group. We need every organization, we need every person. Now, will every person sign up? No, probably not, right? But if you could get a fourth, a third, I mean, it'd be phenomenal, a half. But would everybody think about what's the contribution you could make? It doesn't have to be big. And from our consultant from Bend, Oregon, the comment was, how they organized that was they called it one small thing. And a whole lot of one small things may be the very biggest thing, the very biggest opportunity that we have. So the idea here wasn't to pull together a group to say, hey, here's the direction we ought to go. The idea was to pull together a group that wanted to build on the strong foundation that we have and set ourselves up with a process that might work 70 years from today to keep Columbus as a very stellar community, to move it to be the best that it can be, to maybe shoot for building America's best community. And so the steering committee, the group didn't come with that idea of here's where we need to go. It came with that idea of how do we build a structure that all the people in Columbus could plug into, and that in that way we potentially build the very best community. So as I said, we're a group of individuals. Yes, we're community leaders. Yes, we have areas that we plug into, but really we're citizens. We're citizens of this place that want to see it better. They're inviting other citizens to join with us and to be a part of it and to ask that question, what role could you play? What role could Rotary play in making this the very best community in the country? What role could your organization play? What role could you play? So we're opening it up, we're diversifying the leadership, we're creating process for it, we're on a quest, we're on a journey, and we're inviting others to join us. So with that, I'd probably turn it over to Jim, and then Bonnie, and then another Jim.
Let me pull the lens back at the risk of being a little repetitive to share my thoughts on Quest first, this pillar second, and where Cummins fits in. As I mentioned, I'm honored to be here. I'm also very proud to be a participant representing Cummins in this community-led initiative, this community-led quest, as Rick said, to be America's best community. I've said this before. In fact, I did so last time I had the privilege to speak to many in the Rotary Club, but it comes to mind again, and that is, in so many ways, I believe we all stand on the shoulders of giants. As Rick said, it was more than 60 years ago that Mr. Miller articulated his vision for our community, a vision defined by an aspirational goal to be the very best community of its size in the country. And we, of course, have expanded the vision to be simply America's best community. Mr. Miller also said in the same speech that no such community can be built without citizens determined to make their community the best. As Rick was alluding to, we're all citizens. And here we are, generations later, doing exactly that, being determined to make our community the best, and this is our quest. And in another wonderful tradition of our community, our approach is to do this together, to listen to members of our community, to generate ideas together, and to invite all of us and all of you to be a part of our quest. It's a broad-based community contribution approach. As Rick said, it's a process, not a plan of building something together that none of us could do alone. For my part, and from Cummins' perspective, this is perhaps the most important and certainly the most ambitious community-led initiative of all our community activities. That is to establish a common roadmap for us to follow together to build America's best community by focusing on these three pillars. And as I mentioned, I'm going to comment briefly on economic vitality. This, to me and to us, defines the best economy, as stated here, as one that works for everyone by attracting and supporting businesses to help people grow and thrive. Now, I often say, and I believe from a lifetime of observation, that our company, Cummins, and our community, Columbus, are inseparable. We have the same history, the same heritage, the same values, and we even use the same language. For our community-led quest to be America's best community, we've defined the best economy as one that works for everyone by attracting and supporting businesses such as our own to help people grow and thrive. Comparing this to Cummins' stated mission, which is making people's lives better by powering a more prosperous world. Or compare it to our Cummins Foundation's stated mission, which is making people's lives better by building more prosperous communities. It's the same language. It's the same sentiment. Leveraging organizations, leveraging businesses as responsible corporate citizens to make lives better, to help people grow and thrive. So Cummins is committed to doing our part to support not only the economic vitality pillar, but each of the others, as well as our community-led quest overall. We look forward to it. We're proud to be part of it. And I invite each of you to join us as well.
Good afternoon, everybody. Just imagine a place that is a relatively small city, but accomplishes a title as one of the top cities for architectural design in the country. Imagine a place that has, as a community, schools that in 1 year all achieve the math state championship, elementary, middle, and high school levels. Imagine a community that is able to put two institutions together and even flying simultaneously, let's say Purdue and Indiana University next to them. Those kinds of things, those kinds of accomplishments take intentionality. And so, piggybacking on what the mayor said earlier about intentionality, what I love about Quest is taking this great big concept of being the best and trying to dial it down or bring it into a way that we can all understand at the top level of whatever entity and whatever organization you might be working within, formally and informally, my neighborhood, the church I might attend, whatever those other things might be, the HOA that all of a sudden something happened to somebody I'm president of, don't like that at all. Telling somebody that, get a sign in your yard. Anyway, how do you do all that stuff in a good way for neighbors? So as we work through that, then it comes all the way down to what was said about that individual, and what does Jim Roberts do as an individual? Not necessarily Jim Roberts, former superintendent, Jim Roberts, currently with the CEC. What does Jim Roberts do for this community? I am co-convening the Education and Talent Pillar with Cindy Fry. You all know Cindy, I think, with the Chamber. And so we've put together an all-star team. So in regards to the best, Cindy and I approached that right off. It was like, we're going to have the best team. So if I would go to that I'm not going to put it in front of you, because then you see who all is on the other teams and start making comparisons, but we have the best. And so if people want to join our team, we're like bringing them on and adding to that. Because we're getting together routinely and having conversations within that team along that education and talent piece of what are, first, and the way we've structured this with intentionality to understand, first, what are some game changers that would need to happen for us educationally and with talent recruitment and development be the best community then in the country. And to throw out an idea, I mentioned the math piece. It was back when we had Southside and Lincoln both as elementary champs, we had Central as a champ, and we had North Close as a champ, all in the same year at the same time in the state of Indiana. So with that going on, plus all the great accomplishments our kids have here locally and other things that are happening within the community STEM capital of Indiana. Well, why just STEM capital of Indiana? Why not STEM capital of the country? If we are, does that help us in some small way, like architecture, be a game changer for people to say, that's a really good community. And there's so many things that can happen with STEM capital. Because the next piece we're talking about is, in order to become the STEM capital, what's a quick win that we can get? Brian, you might be mentioning a potential quick win. So we get to having a conversation with Brian about, hey, what are some things that are going on? What do you need? I was having meetings with different people about the Quest idea. Brian has this great idea. We're getting this new, architecturally significant, air traffic control tower going up. And there's an air traffic controller shortage in our country. And we had this idea, Brian had this idea about, can we create this educational campus that has an airport next to it, this program to create and develop air traffic controllers? Yes, we can. So a quick win, got that idea going, had all the pieces we need to put together. Is there a certification program? Yes. Can we find an instructor? Yes. Can we find space to do it in? Yes. Do we have the technology to do it? No, not yet. So that's going to cost some money. Can we find that money? Yes. And so we will have, at some point in time, as everything gets worked out, an air traffic controller program to add to the aviation program already going on, pilot program we have on that campus, to add to the work. Quick win, but contributing to that STEM capital of Indiana piece. Another example from a education and talent piece would be about early learning and child care. Anybody know of any problems or challenges or issues in early learning and child care? What if our community addressed that system of child care and through some tri-share model, quadruple share model, whatever the right word is there, quad share model, how we could come up with a way, a system to have high quality providers. We meet capacity, have the seats necessary for those who want to have a child in a seat, and it's affordable. How do we create that system? Can we do that? We've received a grant for this community, one of 3 in the state of Indiana, to work on the system itself. Not just one part of the system, but the system. If Columbus is to be known as the best child care community in the country, is that a game changer for us being the best community in the country? Probably. The quick win so far there would be, we have the grant to work on the system. So we at least have some dollars to fund that opportunity to figure out what that system could look like, trying to meet all those things. And Ivy Tech has money from a system perspective to help develop early childhood instructors who are highly qualified. So a couple of examples there. Organization, we could go down into that. Airport, Ivy Tech, us involved, and then back down to the individual level. So looking at my time, trying to get through this very quickly, but just want you all to understand that this is a thing for everybody. It's not, hey, you have to do this. Let's think about what game changers are in each of those areas. What are some quick wins we can get to? Let's prioritize those. One thing we always say with Jack in civic lab and I worked around the country, is that it's never a matter of are there enough resources, it's a matter of where you spend your resources. So if we prioritize appropriately as a community, use the resources we have for those priorities, then they'll be really good. And perhaps, at least we can look at it being the very best community we can have.
I'm really excited to be a part of Quest. When Rick and others came and said, we want you to be a part of this, I thought, I'm not exactly sure where I fit in, but my heart was really in that one small thing. I'm involved in a lot of different groups and organizations and run a book club and all sorts of things, and I really got excited about how can I think about best in my own life and how would that contribute to the community. And then it turned out that as we started talking to 3,000 members of the community, some of my day work as well showed up. And so Sense of Place is the organization or the pillar that I'm helping lead as we bring people together and say, what does Sense of Place really mean? Well, what the community said is, if we have a thriving downtown and we build on our vibrant arts and culture, arts and cultural life scene that we have, that we're so proud of in Columbus, then we will be the best community. And so we pull those together, Sense of Place. We're already doing a lot of work around thriving downtown. I think you know that. And we also are doing a lot around arts and culture. And so we brought a lot of people together and said, let's start there. We won't stop at downtown. We'll eventually move out into all the neighborhoods that make our community great. But that's where we're really getting started. And so love to being a part of this. It really means a lot to me. That one small thing keeps coming back over and over, even though I'm helping with one of the pillars. That's the thing that really sparks my continuation with this group, and it's just exciting to see so many people coming together. So as others have said, this is not ours. This is really the community's. You can get involved in lots of ways, and we really would love more community conversations about it. So invite us to other events. We'd love to come and talk about it. And we really appreciate you having us here today. So thank you so much.